James Carville knew how to win, and he blamed the Democratic losses this November 2nd on stupid wokeness, to which AOC fired back that wokeness is a term almost exclusively used by older people these days. So that should tell you all you need to know. What? This is a term folks like you brought out very recently and had been proudly displaying at every march since. Just last year, The Guardian declared woke the word of our era. I guess they didn't get the memo from the Mean Girls Club. We don't use that emoji anymore. Woke, please. We say fetch now.
Bill Maher is calling out AOC for dismissing concerns about wokeism and steering the country in the wrong direction. You'd think that after taking a beating in the elections, the DNC would recalibrate and move back toward the center, but instead, its biggest stars, especially AOC, appeared determined to double down on woke politics.
That said, I would love to have AOC on this show. There's so much to admire there. I was one of her first supporters for the Green New Deal idea. But that will probably never happen because Democrats don't go anywhere these days where they're not pre-adored. And that's my last bit of advice to them. Go where the amen corner isn't. Do Fox News. Be brave. Come here. Go everywhere. Winning is about expanding the electorate.
And Maher isn't letting up. Welcome to this video where he takes apart AOC's latest woke arguments. Buckle up, everyone, because this one gets seriously intense.
What a great strategy, never missing an opportunity to remind voters how lame and clueless and hopelessly uncool they are, especially since those are the ones who actually vote. But okay, fine. What word would you like us to use for the plainly insane excesses of the left that are not liberalism, but something completely different? Because you can't have that word liberal from us and think it should cover things like canceling Lincoln and teaching third graders their oppressors. That's all your new thing.
Now here where things really get interesting. AOC isn't actually afraid of woke ideology, she's afraid of being called woke. It basically saying, I love everything this movement represents, just don't stick the label on me. Even while trying to distance herself from the term, she somehow remains unmistakably, perfectly woke. And that's exactly what Maher is hammering home. He not quibbling over language, he calling out an entire circle of self-described woke activists who insist they're just progressives, even as their ideas drift far from traditional liberal values. Maher's point is straightforward. Liberalism once meant open debate, common sense, and listening to opposing views. Now, thanks to AOC and her ideological crew, it's morphing into a hypermoral, ultra-sensitive crusade that barely resembles the liberalism it claims to defend.
A more pertinent question to ask about the word woke might be, why in such a short time has it gone from a rallying cry to a pejorative? If the word only made you think of rational, deserved causes like teaching a less whitewashed version of American history, AOC would still want to own it. But it's a joke because it makes you think of people who wake up offended and take orders from Twitter, and their oversensitivity has grown tiresome.
Exactly. Figures like AOC and Bernie Sanders don't represent genuine liberal values, not the traditional kind that protect free speech, promote open discussion, and focus on workable solutions. Ironically, they've even co-opted the original meaning of woke, which once referred to awareness of real, tangible social injustices. Today, the word has been twisted to justify extreme ideas that most ordinary people can't relate to. What began as a push for awareness has morphed into a cultural performance where the goal isn't justice, but appeasing a small group that endlessly offended. Rather than developing policies that actually help working-class Americans, the movement obsesses over language policing, niche ideological battles, and purity tests no one asked for. Maher's message is unmistakable. This modern woke agenda has drifted far from true liberalism and even farther from the concerns of everyday people.
People ask me all the time, why haven't you ever had Hillary or Bill Clinton on? Why didn't you have Kamala on during the last campaign? You think we don't ask? We ask these people every week. they say no. It took 8 years and a petition to get Obama on. And these are people, all people I voted for. Think about that. They're afraid to come on the show of a guy who voted for them. The Republicans, they show up.
Anyone who followed this channel knows this isn't Maher's first time challenging Democrats to come on his show. He rolled out the red carpet, extended personal invitations, and even called them out publicly, yet they still refused to appear. The reason is pretty obvious. They know Maher won't pander or let them recite talking points without pushback. Yes, he a Democrat, but he the kind who still believes in tough questions, real debate, and calling out nonsense when he sees it. That alone makes him toxic to today's hypersensitive, tightly managed political class. They understand that sitting across from Maher means being pressed on every inconsistency, having their contradictions exposed, and potentially watching their woke narratives fall apart on national TV. So instead, they avoid him because facing Maher means facing reality.
You can give the people all the goodies Joe Manchin will allow, and it doesn't seem to buy their love. Why? Why is the party that supports so many issues that benefit the middle class still considered out of touch by 62% of Americans? In plain English, nobody likes a snob. Hillary Clinton didn't have anyone on rural research or outreach when she ran in 2016 until the race tightened just before the election. Then they hired one. And where was his office? Brooklyn. True story. Politics is local, not locally sourced. It's not artisan. It's art and stand.
These days, the DNC seems far more invested in political theater than in tackling the problems that actually keep everyday Americans up at night. Instead of focusing on the concerns of average voters, they cater to the loudest voices on the far left, voices that don't truly represent most of their own supporters. Maher has repeatedly tried to drive home a simple political truth: politics isn't a performance. It's local. It's about showing up for the people who elected you, listening to their struggles, and addressing the bread and butter issues that shape daily life. Yet that message continues to fly over the heads of figures like AOC, who seem more absorbed in ideological battles than practical governance. Maher's point is unmistakable. If Democrats want to rebuild trust, they need less performance and more real problem solving. Right now, they're falling well short of that goal.
Your microaggression culture doesn't play in the Rust Belt. If a staffer hands you a speech that says menstruating people instead of women, don't say that. Say women. Don't put anyone fresh out of college in charge of the campaign. They've been given participation trophies their whole life. They don't know how to win.
Maher continues breaking down, point by point, the woke miscalculations that helped sink the DNC in the elections, and he doesn't sugarcoat any of it. He calls out how the party nearly erased the concept of womanhood, replacing a word that stood for thousands of years with awkward clinical terms like menstruating people or birthing people, while expecting everyday Americans to treat it as perfectly normal. Then there's the obsession with radicalized education culture. Instead of emphasizing resilience, standards, and real achievement, the system flooded students with participation trophies: no effort required, no excellence rewarded. The message was unmistakable: just show up and you win. Maher argues that this mentality eventually spilled into politics, activism, and even the workplace. Which leads to another issue he highlights: hiring based not on competence, but on checking the right demographic boxes. Merit took a back seat, and voters noticed. These aren't minor missteps, Maher says. They're clear examples of ideological overreach, and they explain exactly how the DNC lost touch with both reality and the people it claims to represent.
To a lot of folks in America, you come across as the cares about everybody but me party. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can find ways to stand up for these folks without being David Duke. This month, when the Democrats finally passed their big $1 trillion bill to rebuild our roads and bridges, 6 Democrats voted no because it didn't go far enough to address climate change, which I'm sure is true. What does? But this was free money from the federal government that would actually improve their constituents' lives. I can see a voter saying, you know, squad, I agree with you on climate change, But as long as it is happening, we also need money for getting the water pumped out of the subway.
Today, Democrats often seem more focused on causes overseas than on the people living in their own communities. They rally loudly for Gaza, host emotional events for teens in Guatemala, and circulate heartfelt appeals for communities in Afghanistan. Yet when it comes to issues that directly affect American families' jobs, safety, housing, and the cost of living, they stall, get bogged down in ideological debates, or take no action at all. Maher points to one striking example: a massive funding package that was rejected simply because it didn't include climate change provisions. Instead of using those funds to address urgent problems like crumbling infrastructure, strained cities, and struggling households, they scrapped the entire deal. It sends the message that domestic hardship can wait, while global symbolism cannot. Maher's point is sharp but reasonable. They could have taken the funding, fixed immediate problems, and then fought for climate-focused policies afterward. That's how practical politics works. But today Democrats are so fixated on ideological purity that they'd rather refuse compromise than deliver relief. And voters are paying attention.
And then there's abortion, a difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on. But they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
The woke ideological wave arguably reached its breaking point when the far left began insisting that men could get pregnant, a claim so detached from basic biology that many people didn't know whether to laugh or be alarmed. To reinforce the message, they even introduced a pregnant man emoji, as if a small digital symbol could override thousands of years of science. It was ideological theater, plain and simple. Predictably, the public reacted with confusion, disbelief, and plenty of raised eyebrows. Reasonable questions and critiques followed, pointing out just how far the conversation had drifted from reality. But instead of engaging, the far left responded with outrage. Anyone who dared to question the claim, even respectfully, was labeled intolerant, bigoted, or hateful. Dialogue wasn't welcome, compliance was. Dissent became something to punish. Accept the narrative without hesitation or be cast as an enemy of progress. That when it became clear this was no longer about inclusion or justice. It had turned into ideological enforcement, and everyday people couldn't keep up with the constantly shifting rules of woke correctness.
Last week, an 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team, and the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer. That's why. Their message to you was, I'm an American now. I'm here. Be my lawyer, not the lawyer for the migrants showing up in my backyard.
At the end of the day, Maher's critique isn't just about AOC, woke language, or ideological theater. It's about a Democratic Party so consumed by performance politics that it lost sight of the people it claims to serve. From redefining basic biology to handing out participation trophies, from prioritizing global symbolism over local suffering to rejecting critical funding because it didn't perfectly align with climate ideology, the far left has created a political landscape that feels completely disconnected from everyday Americans. Maher's point is clear and unambiguous. When a party cares more about appeasing fringe activists than solving real problems, voters will walk away, and they did. The DNC didn't lose because Americans became heartless or uninformed. They lost because the party ignored reality, stifled dissent, and treated common sense as a threat. If Democrats hope to regain trust, They need to stop policing language, stop coddling ideological extremes, and start tackling the issues that actually affect ordinary people. Until that happens, voices like Maher will continue calling them out, and voters will keep sending the same message at the ballot box. That wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit like and subscribe for more content like this.